Assalamu alaikum, Faisal here, and welcome to the latest Know Your Purpose session. And in this one, we're going to look at service, and we're going to understand service a little bit deeper. So here's what we're going to cover: the birds and the bees, understanding service, the mindset of a servant, and the principles of service. So with that in mind, let's get started. And a strange one: the birds and the bees. So before we go into what service is in this context, I want to tell you a little bit about the birds and the bees. And obviously, yeah, I bet you weren't expecting that. Now, of course, I'm talking about birds and bees literally. In this case, not the famous euphemism that's used to teach children, about reproduction and stuff. So we touched upon this slightly when I talked about Iqbal and the Shaheen, the eagle. But the reason I'm starting with this is that it really gives us a really good understanding of what traits we need to embody when we're thinking about this whole idea of service. What do we need to become like to truly excel in our purpose? And a huge part of that and us living by our purpose is to render our service. Ultimately, what I realized is that there's huge significance in these two creatures, and that's the case because they're constantly mentioned throughout our scripture, and there's a great deal we can learn from them. Obviously, I give this analogy because it's something that it reminds us of how we need to interact with not only ourselves but with others. And just to summarize it, we, as an individual, we should be like a bird, and when it comes to others, we should be like a bee. But this will all make sense as I go through it. So let me explain and let's understand this a little bit deeper. So let's start with birds. Birds are mentioned a lot in the Quran and also in the Seerah. Even in our heritage, there's a lot of love for birds. So throughout art, poetry, architecture, all sorts. Their importance is reflected by their presence alongside, in different prophet stories. For example, the story of Ibrahim, Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam, and Isa alayhi salam. So, for example, to put his heart at rest, Ibrahim alayhi salam was shown a divine miracle using birds. In the story of Dawood alayhi salam, it was revealed to the Muslims that the birds frequently praise God in their communication. Sulaiman alayhi salam had the ability to speak to birds, and when he appointed the hooper bird as his messenger to the Queen of Sheba. And Hazrat Isa was commanded to demonstrate God's omnipotence by breathing life into clay birds. And so here's some of the Quran ayahs to go to it. And we subjugated the mountains and the birds to give glory along with David. And then, do they not see the birds above them spreading and contracting their wings? Seest not now Allah is He whom do glorify all who are in the heavens and earth, and the birds with wings outspread. Even in Surah Al-Fil, the story of the king, with lots of elephants who came to invade Makkah in the year the Prophet was born, he was defeated and sent home by birds with rocks, who became warriors for Allah. The raven, he taught Cain, the Cain and Abel story, how to bury his brother's body. There are also numerous hadith mentioning the love that Prophet had for birds and throughout history. So, for example, there's a famous quote: "Place wheat on the tops of the mountains, so it cannot be said that a bird went hungry in the land of the Muslims." That was the Umayyad Caliph Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And there's a famous book called The Conference of the Birds by Farid Attar, who narrated about a group of birds led by the hooper, who was the wisest, who come into a realization of their spiritual achievement through journeying towards God. So you can see there's a lot of allegories, there's a lot of references to birds. So why is that? Because nothing in the Quran is meaningless or purposeless. So, let's think about it a little bit. Let's ponder on it. So obviously this got me thinking about them and why they're so revered. And I realized that birds are a perfect representation of freedom and purpose, right? So first of all, there's a reminder for us to be humble and grateful. All power and might is from Allah alone. Remember, La hawla la quwwata illa billahi azim, which is the golden rule. And, the eyes of the ground. Do they not see birds suspended in midair, up in the sky? Nothing holds them there except Allah. There are certainly signs in those for those people who have faith. So nothing is done by because the birds have got wings. No, Allah is the one keeping them up there. Have complete reliance and trust. So having tawakkul. So Umar ibn al-Khattab narrated that the Prophet Muhammad said that if only you relied on Allah true reliance, He will provide sustenance for you, just as He does the birds. They fly out in the morning empty and return in the afternoon with full stomachs. So the reliance of birds is that they do not store their livelihood. They have full trust that Allah, just as Allah provided them with their food today, He will shortly grant their food tomorrow as well. So again, for when you think about purpose, so one of the things that prevents us from, doing purposeful activities are the fear, I'm making money for my current job and I can't leave that and do something else. And, it's a whole fear of the unknown, the fear of this, fear of that. But this is where having that tawakkul, having that trust comes in. So birds, because they soar up high, they have a clear view of the path forward. They see the big picture. They have this sense of direction. They don't fly, aimlessly and just, it's everything's done with a clear purpose. And they go south for the winter. So essentially they do hijrah. If things get tough and difficult, they do hijrah and they strive and struggle to get to a better place if required. Obviously birds of a feather flock together, as the famous saying goes. So that means that, like-minded people should unite and work together. There's also, it's well known, that the condor, for example, which is a type of bird, there was a survey done, I think in the 70s, and they said that what's the most efficient species out there? And the condor was number one, right? In terms of, when they say efficient, the furthest distance traveled and the least energy expounded. So again, it's the most efficient. So again, this is another lesson for us as well. By the humans were number 4 on that list. That's quite interesting. Truly talented people, who are living a life purpose and destined for success, are meant to soar and excel and fly high to reach their potential. And so they're going to do that, even if the world and everything in it tries to tie them down. And this is a really good quote from The Shawshank Redemption comes in. Some birds are not meant to be caged, that's all. Their feathers are too bright, their songs are too sweet, too wild. So if you let them go, and when you open the cage to feed them, they somehow fly out past you. And the part of you that knows that it was wrong to imprison them in the first place rejoices. But still, the place where you live is that much more drab and empty for their departure. Another thing that purposeful pioneer must do, don't worry about the haters. I get another quote here. Did you ever see an unhappy horse? Did you ever see a bird that has the blues? One reason is that birds and horses are not unhappy because they're not trying to impress other birds and horses. Right, Dale Carnegie said that. So again, I'm giving you just a few quotes that reference birds and stuff like that. But the point that I'm trying to get across is what birds, what traits birds have that we can learn from in the pursuit of our purpose. And again, this will become relevant a little bit, in this later on in this session. Use what talents you possess. The woods would be very silent if no birds sang, except those that sang best. So again, everyone has a gift. Again, these points are still, they're repeating themselves. Everyone has a gift, and everyone can add value in some way or other. It would make for a colder and poorer world if we suppress our own talents for fear of failure. Right? We just need to keep progressing. Be brave, have faith, disrupt the status quo. And once you take the first step, anything is possible. The bird dares to break the shell, and the shell breaks open, and the bird can fly openly. This is the simplest principle of success. You dream, you dare, and you fly. So again, obviously that is that you have that nervousness of, I'm going out of my comfort zone. But if you don't break through that shell and you don't try it, how are you ever going to fly? Work on bettering your character, nurturing soul, and cultivating strong relationships with people. So again, it's not only fine feathers that make fine birds. So again, it's not about what's on the outside. It's also about your character. That's the true substance. So that's one of Aesop's quotes of Aesop's fables fame. Persevere and be resilient. So everyone has problems surrounding them. Just confront them head on, persevere, and you'll eventually fly. Even baby birds don't have strong enough wings to fly first time of trying, but obviously they don't give up. They're grateful and positive. So again, there's a few quotes that reference this. Birds sing after a storm. Why shouldn't people feel as free to delight in whatever sunlight remains to them? And faith is the bird that feels the light when the dawn is still dark. And then again, a lot of people use birds as this example. because it's something very relatable. You have to believe in happiness or happiness never comes. That's the reason that a bird can sing. On its darkest day, he still believes in spring. And so this reminds me a lot of gratitude and what Allah says in the Quran. Remember, your Lord calls to be declared. If you are grateful, I will increase you. So again, there's a lot of comparisons here. Inspire others. So even interestingly, Abbas ibn Fanas, who is a 9th century inventor of the golden age of Islam, he was the first person who was able to fly, right? And again, he said he was inspired by, and he studied bird flights and landings for over a decade, or if not two, and before he attempted it. And then he did so with the help of, he built a pair of wings, built like silk, wood, and real feathers. And then when he the first time he did it, he crash landed, and then he's realized, oh no, actually, I didn't do this part of, I didn't look at the bird landing enough. So the next time he tried it, he did it and stuff. So again, it was an inspiration, and then obviously a lot of his work then went on to be, expanded upon, and different inventions and contraptions kind of created accordingly. There's another Ibn Qayyim quote which I really like, called "The heart is like a bird, love as its head, and its two wings are hope and fear." So what he's saying essentially is that the bird is going towards a destination. It's got its one direction in mind, and it needs love, hope, and fear in the right quantities to be able to carry it to the direction it needs to go to. So how are we using love, fear, and hope? Are we using it in the right way? And again, if this reminds me a little bit of the driving forces. So remember we said that Jannah and Jahannam are our driving forces, pain and pleasure. So hope and fear are those kind of counterbalances. And then love of Allah, that this is what servitude is, and that whole worship in terms of that direction. Okay, so that's birds, right? So there's a lot of different things there that we can take away from birds. Now, bees. So bee is also a very significant creature in Islam, and there's a whole chapter named after them, Surah Nahl, which is chapter 16. So why are bees so important? Even the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the example of the believer is just like the example of the bee, right? So explicit. It's not just, this is not me just putting two and two together and coming out with 5. It's very explicitly mentioned. And the first the first thing to mention here is that bees and humans share something very important in common, which is the honor and the ability to receive wahi, which is revelation or divine inspiration. So, and your Lord inspired to the bee, take for yourself amongst the mountains, houses, and amongst the trees, and in that which they construct. Then eat from all the fruits and follow the ways of your Lord lay down for you. There emerges from their bellies a drink varying colours, but in which there is healing for people. Indeed, in that there is a time for people who give thought. So, Allah actually inspired the bee. So I thought obviously they'd be worth studying to see any lessons we can learn. So first of all, what did we learn? And again, the way I did this, watched documentary, I read a couple of books about bees, and so it's really, really fascinating creatures, honestly. So first of all, they're the very essence of excellent teamwork in action. You cannot produce honey without worker bees working together. One passes the nectar, the other one chews it, etc. to produce it. They give back to the flower more than they take when they pollinate it. That means that they're always adding value and keeping strong relationships and leaving the other party in a better place than when they found them. They only eat nectar from fresh flowers that no other bee has eaten from. So they are pure and wholesome in what they take in, and they're also mindful of not taking from anyone else's fair due. They don't go to flowers that are not yet mature, nor ones which are rotting. So they're very careful about what they consume, and they only accept the best of the best. So they've got high standards. They're careful about what they consume. Sometimes that's not something that we are always in this day and age. In their bellies is the healing for mankind, right? So that means that all the hard work they do is to give benefit to mankind. It's not for their own benefit, it's for a higher purpose, right? Which says it all. When they land on something, they don't break or destroy it. They are gentle and nimble, and therefore very careful of causing harm. So for example, the bee, if it lands on a flower to guzzle its nectar carelessly, it would break it, because the bee is quite heavy versus a delicate flower. So what it does, it actually flutters and flaps its wing over the flower, so its own weight supported. So they don't actually lean on the flower itself. Again, very, very interesting that this dedication and this duty of care that it has, and the ihsan it has in performing its role. They're very mindful of doing good and not causing harm. So if a bee from another hive is already at the flower, so basically, if there's already a bee at the flower, they know if they went and took from the same flower, the flower would die because it can't take, it's too much is being taken. So they respect that another bee got there first, and they find another. They also provide a knock-on effect in terms of impact. So much of our food today wouldn't exist without the bee. Right? We wouldn't survive for too long if bees came extinct. This means they have a legacy, something that they do which they don't even benefit from themselves, but others do. They know their truth, so they understand their purpose in life and they work towards that very thing. They don't try and question it or trying to be something they're not. They're on a mission, but humbly so. The worker bee doesn't try and fight for power. In the same spirit, every bee has a role to play, and no good deed is considered too small. It all counts. That role is very clear to them. The queen bee is the one who builds the home, and the male worker bees are the ones that go out and do the work to make her home prosperous and plentiful. They are great communicators and keep the hive and community informed of any danger up ahead. They also do a special bee dance if they have good news to share, such as a new food source. They don't hoard. They'll share the benefits with their fellow bee, as they know sharing with their own community will benefit their own hive in the long run. They are persistent. If they fail, they keep on trying. They are super loyal to their queen. They understand authority and work diligently towards their chosen one. So again, remember that all the stuff I said about unity and leadership, the giving the bayah, all that stuff. So they are very, very loyal to their queen. Again, this is why they're their example. They're an example for us. According to scientists, the bumblebee's body is too heavy and its wingspan is too small. So aerodynamically, in theory, the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly. But the bumblebee doesn't know that, and it keeps flying anyway. So I found that fascinating, and I found it profound, but just because what that's essentially saying is it's defying science. It's defying the law of gravity or the law of aerodynamics, essentially. Because so what it's saying is that it doesn't allow himself to be affected by limiting beliefs or self-imposed, and often our limiting beliefs are self-imposed. So again, a very good example for us to learn from. Super intelligent. The bee's brain can perform 10 trillion operations per second. They admire beauty and are attracted by beautiful, pleasant things, and they will go to the flower that's most attractive to them. So again, there's something that, again, you can see parallels here, because a lot of these themes I've talked about how intelligent we are, how beauty begets beauty, and how beauty is a core element of Islamic principles and stuff. Again, lifelong learners, another thing. They have to constantly learn new locations of flowers to visit. They're hardworking. Bees have to travel 90,000 miles, which is the same as 3 orbits around the Earth, to produce just 1 kg of honey. Biggest one, in my opinion, is to get to the end result, which is the honey. It cannot come and without all of the other aspects, the hard work, the humility, the unity, to coming together for the greater good, happening. So they have to do all that stuff, and then they'll get the end result, which is the honey. You can't just get it by taking shortcuts. And what's the even more impressive is that in everything that they do, they actually give life. They add value. They have impact. They do not disrupt or harm a single soul in pursuit of their purpose. So these are the traits of the birds and the bees, and you can see there's lots that they share. They're resilient. They praise God. They're united. They're purpose driven. They're hardworking. They can travel long distances. Again, so we might have to travel long distances. We have to make a lot of effort in order for us to do what we do. They're self-sufficient. So there's a lot of different things here. But again, all of these aspects is stuff that we should need to adopt when we're thinking about how we're going to be delivering our service. So this quote was quite interesting. So If revolutions are not government-led initiatives, how do they begin? One insight, which is attributed to Benjamin Franklin, is that there are three sorts of people in the world: those who are immovable, those who are movable, and those who move. And so, those who are movable, they're never going to change no matter what. Then there's people who are movable, so in the sense that they can be influenced. They need to be inspired, but then they'll take action. And those who move, so like look at birds, look at bees, they are creatures that move and they travel and they take action and they do what they need to do. And we need to be those people that move, because then we can have influence over those people who are movable. And then between us, we can actually make the change that we need to make in the world and all that stuff. So you can see what we can learn from birds and bees is when we're conducting ourselves and following our purpose and conducting our service. This is how we should be. So now let's understand service a little bit deeper. And what is service? Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So Margaret Mead, quite famous, saying that. So our responsibility to serve. So there's a famous concept called the two Adams. There was an essay written in the 1960s by a rabbi. Now, the rabbi talked about the two natures of man, and he talked about it from the Genesis narrative, right? And what he said is that, look, what society has done is foregone one for the other. Essentially, we've gone from we to me. Right, let me explain. So he said that, look, there's two Adams. The first Adam is the resume Adam, is how he said it. Now, resume Adam wants to conquer the world. Basically, this is the one that has this impressive LinkedIn bio, and he's focused on personal success and high achievement, and he's capable of great things. He's flying high, super successful. Then we have Adam 2, which is what he calls eulogy Adam. So eulogy is obviously what they say at your funeral, how they remember you, etc. And so the eulogy Adam wants to serve the world and achieve a higher calling. This is service and legacy driven. So again, I thought that was quite interesting, because it's similar to the birds and bees example. Resume is the bird who is very, he's a high flyer and all that stuff. But then eulogy Adam is the dedicated to a higher purpose and serving and stuff, which is like the bees. And the reason again I find this interesting is because it actually resonates with how Allah describes man in the Quran. On one hand, he is reminded that he is made from a clot of blood, or is insignificant, nothing more than a lowly beast, and is nothing except a speck of dust with a luck or honour to have life breathed into him. But then on the other hand, he is elevated and told he has been honoured with the highest of all gifts, that of knowledge of all things, and mind to reason, and has been provided with a lofty rank, and all the good things on heaven and earth. So this seems like a paradox. Right? How do you reconcile these two such opposing positions? Why does God tell mankind that he's bestowed upon him with the highest rank and created as a viceroy on earth with all these amazing responsibilities and the gift of knowledge, if within the same book he's telling mankind that he's nothing but a drop of sperm and an insignificant being who's forgetful and neglectful and ungrateful? Sheikh Ramadan al-Bouti explains. He actually has a quote here. If you contemplate the Quran's address to man and the insight, guidance and instruction it contains, then you realize revolves around the axis of this goal. Thus it inspires man to start to comprehend his reality and become familiar with its essence. Then establish his behavior upon a foundation that is harmonious and strongly in line with this knowledge. If he does this, he will not be submissive or servile to anyone other than the one whose hand in his life is his life and death, his bent in his harm. And he will not clothe himself in the garment of arrogance and oppression, whilst knowing that he is a slave, owned by his master and protector. Essentially, let me explain that. What he's saying is that, the fact that you've been given such a high rank, and you've been given such a great responsibility to carry out, without being reminded of your lowly essence, it could cause you or mankind to become arrogant and to think of all the gifts and success are because of your own doing. Therefore, to know and be aware of your own origin or your limitations keep you humble and within the bounds. You become cognizant of that above all else you are Allah's slave and subject to his authority alone, whilst being honoured by the mission he has given to you. essentially what this means is this is the perfect balance for us as humans to have. We need to balance these two sides, the hedonistic and the altruistic. Right, hedonistic meaning that okay, I want to achieve the highest I can possibly achieve, and achieve great things. But then altruistic, I want to serve my fellow man in the best way possible, etc., etc. So, and again, having this understanding in terms of Allah's given us this amazing honor and this amazing rank, but then remember we are His humble slave, and we remember from where we came from. We're neglectful. That is designed and it's aimed to do exactly that. So basically what that means, just to summarize, is that we need to use all of our Adam 1 ability, but for an Adam 2 purpose. Be a bird and a bee. That purpose is to serve others and have an impact in the way you can do best. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. That was Gandhi who said that. And what Sayyid Al-Attas said here is just that, look, one of the biggest challenges that have happened in this day and age is the knowledge that's been conceived and disseminated throughout the world by Western civilization, and that knowledge has been corrupted, essentially. And he's saying that what is done, this type of knowledge is essentially it's brought chaos to the three kingdoms of nature, the animal, the vegetal, and the mineral, as well as it's brought chaos to mankind himself. Essentially, that's what he's saying, just to summarize that quote. So let's go into the mindset of a servant. So so now that we're recognizing that, okay, we are servants, we're here to serve, ultimately, what does that mean? Everyone is attracted to a person who is kind, generous, and resourceful. And 90% of those people are solely attracted to such a person for how it would benefit them, not for how they intend to benefit or be of service to them. The issue we have in many communities is too many people are operating in a spirit of entitlement, and not enough people are operating in a spirit of service. This is against the law of nature. It creates a cancer within the ecosystem, and the ecosystem cannot survive when the system is eating itself and not feeding itself with a circulation of value. This is what service actually is. When you're serving those around you, the ecosystem blossoms and it prospers. But if you're taking, that's the habit of the cancer cell, essentially. So the mindset of a servant. The world, as it is today, it defines greatness in terms of power, possessions, prestige, and position. Again, more P's there. And a servant in today's world is considered lowly. It's not aspirational. But we need to understand and adopt and embrace how powerful this station actually is. Even in management speak, progressive business books talk about servant leadership, or managers as serving, not as bosses cracking the whip. Your greatness is actually determined by how many people you serve, not how many people serve you. Service is in our nature. Just like a soldier, a servant is always on duty. If they see a responsibility to act that complies with one of the 6 purposes, they jump in. So even more important than the shape is this mindset and attitude to adopt the responsibility that comes with being a human being. Right? Solve problems and needs, be resourceful, and work with equal dedication. Keep your promises and stay low key. That doesn't mean that you can't acquire fame, but the objective has to be, or it has to be, as long as it's a byproduct of the work, not the aim in and of itself. Servants should think about others, not themselves. Think like a steward, not an owner. Remember the Suzerain vassal contract. This essentially is part of our contract, right? The money has the greatest potential to replace God in your life, and materialism, capitalism, consumerism is everywhere you look. And even if you start making a little bit of success, you might even get then tempted by it. So you might start off with the right intention, but then, people, you can sell your soul in this day and age very easily. So, but we need to understand again and keep this at the center of our intention. That why we're doing it. We're here to serve. And look, a lot of people do say, when I achieve financial freedom, then I'm going to focus on service. But the problem with this is, remember what we said: no servant can serve 2 masters. It's impossible. So, because if money is your master, you're going to become its slave, and that's going to drive your decision making. So you won't do this, or you won't say this, because you get cancelled, and then the money won't come. So you need to do whatever you need to do. So you need to make a decision. Why are you doing what you do? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the best of people are those that bring the most benefit to the rest of mankind. So again, very clear cut. So what kind of builder are you? So you can be like a wealth builder, for example, because they what they do is that they amass wealth for themselves, whereas, or you can be an ummah builder. Now what they do is they build things that, that for their overall purpose. So you can still build businesses, become extremely wealthy, but the core difference is that you have to ensure that your purpose is aligned to God and to this, to what we've laid out in this program. What you'll find, if you do it that way, the doors of barakah will like just open for you, if that's what was meant for you. And what you need to also do, if you've got a mindset of a servant, is to think about your own work, not about what others are doing. Then you don't worry about competition or anything. God is a provider to everyone, and everyone's rizq is written. Therefore, you focus on building what you need to build. All that matters is your purpose. It doesn't matter what the world thinks of you, what you're doing. In fact, if the world is against you, it's probably a sign that what you're doing is actually on the right path. Again, status doesn't matter. Whether you serve 1 or 1 billion, your reward is with Allah. Again, this is what you need to keep at the back of your mind. Remember, this work that you're going to carry out is an opportunity to achieve your soul's true desire. It's not a burden. It's not a burden. It might be difficult, it might be challenging, it might be all these things. It's certainly not a burden, because it's actually what your soul truly, truly desires. Nothing in nature lives for itself. The rivers don't drink their own water. The trees don't eat their own fruit. The sun doesn't shine for itself. The flower's fragrance is not for itself. The only rule of nature is to live for each other. We're part of nature. You can't mess with, nature's laws and universal laws and things. So we need to really think about this. So now we understand the mindset, we understand service in general. Now let's go a bit deeper into the principles of service. And this is where, again, where some of the bee and the birds discussion comes a bit more clearer. So what we've understood so far, we've understood, the 6 purposes and that whole framework, one, which all of them are geared towards you getting to do what Allah loves the most from His creation, to fulfill its potential and achieve the purpose it's created for. So the first 5 are centered around you to make you ready to handle this responsibility. The final one is service. And this is what ties into how to actualize your potential, where to channel your focus, your energy, and how you can make Allah pleased through the service you've carried out. And so a lot of the exercises in the next few sessions are aimed at covering exactly that. But before we do that, what do we need to bear in mind when trying to uncover our mission, our direction and purpose? This must be service based. So let's now go more into understanding this whole service aspect. What are the core principles of service based on the Quran, based on Islam? What does the Quran say about purpose from a service perspective? What are the core principles of service? So Jonas Salk, he said that the most important question we must ask ourselves is, are we being good ancestors? So again, Jonas Salk, the scientist who developed the polio vaccine, reportedly made the observation, if all the insects were to disappear from the earth, within 50 years all other forms of life would end. But if all human beings were to disappear from the earth, within 50 years all other forms of life would flourish. The crisis in the worlds of nature and human resources are connected. In other words, we've now become the problem. Another word for it is toxic. How people say we are actually toxic for other creation. But when you look in what Islam promotes and what Islam pushes, that's not how it's supposed to be at all. We're supposed to be in harmony. This is where when you transgress the balances, when you exceed what the mizan, and go to different extremes, this is what happens. But Islam certainly, everything flourishes. It's supposed to flourish. Nature is supposed to flourish. People are supposed to flourish in the Islamic way. So let's look at purpose and service, in the Quran. So if the first word used to describe service in the Quran is imara, and umran is also used, essentially means the same thing. Now what this means is to cultivate or to build. And cultivate, going deeper into that, means to benefit. Obviously cultivation is an agricultural reference because cultivation benefits many. And it's only successful when it's used for good. For example, if you were to say imara with the for grapes, for example, so to cultivate grapes with the imara context, it means that you're only using them for food to eat, not for wine, because so that's the first rule. Whatever you do for service, it has to be something positive, wholesome, good, and useful. So just to give you that example again, so let's say cultivating grapes from an imara perspective, you would only be able to use that for food and not for wine, because wine is being used for a destructive purpose and a haram purpose, whereas to cultivate wine to eat is good, right? So so cultivation in that context, it means it has to be good that comes out of it. So it's the same as building a city, for example. If you were to have a cultivation imara perspective, you're not going to build a city like Las Vegas or Dubai, because this is not beneficial and it will not beget more good. Cultivation essentially means adding value and contributing to society. So what's really interesting about this is this allows someone, even if they're not worshipping, to serve. And otherwise this can make non-Muslims purposeless. So let me explain that, because this is a really profound point. When you look at the Golden Age or any place where Islam prospered, obviously there were non-Muslims there as well. Now, what was their purpose? Because if we're saying your purpose is to worship Allah, etc., and then they're not people who worship Allah, what was their purpose then? Well, when you look at Imara from this perspective, which is to serve, and they were still being productive, they were still actually adding value and contributing to society, they were still having impact, so that they, and then they were doing it, to their own religion and stuff. That, but the point of it is that, everyone has got a purpose, and obviously your salvation and whether you follow Islam comes from Allah at the end of the day and stuff. But that's the point, that as long as you're doing imara and cultivating, and it's got a correct outcome, that's the right type of activity. So in order for you to do your imara cultivation, you are allowed ithara, which means you can use anything you want from the earth. So as in our capacity as Khalifa, as Vicegerent, Allah has said, look, you've got full dominion, full control over the earth's resources and its creatures. So think about that. A gorilla, a whale, an elephant, that's way more stronger than a human, right? A cheetah's way faster. But, we're allowed to, utilize everything and anything for our benefit. Well, not for our benefit, for the benefit from an Ithara perspective, as long as we're cultivating that and using it for the good of society. But this means our intention and aims must dictate whether it counts as cultivation. So this is something very important to ask when we're thinking about what we're choosing to do. And if you look at a lot of how society is today, a lot of things aren't done for the right reasons. They aren't cultivating. It's actually set up for the wrong reasons, and so that's why when enough people do that, this is how societies change and decline and become bad. So the second principle of service, according to the Quran, is the word istikhla, which means stewardship. So again, he's made his khilafah on the earth, and so this has two elements. So we are actually created for the next generation, and the people before us were created to serve our generation. So that how it ensures how the human race can survive and thrive. So we're here to ensure that we serve the next generation, to serve they can survive and thrive, right? So we are a critical link to the previous generation and the future generation. So from one side, we're the caliph, i.e. we're leading that future generation. And from the other end, we're the salaf, i.e. we're following what came before. So again, this is very interesting in terms of framing and positioning where we are. It means we've got a duty and responsibility. Imagine that previous generation, as soon as the previous generation ends, right, reset button, and now you start everything again that they did for example, we have to build roads from scratch. We have to build buildings from scratch. We have to do all we don't have to do that. Right? You basically, as soon as you've managed to get life back to normality, it's start again. You're old, and it's the next generation's turn. So the point is that we should be grateful that they actually did something. They've done their responsibility. They've served and built all these things for us and left us all this stuff. So we need to have a gratitude for those people who have done that for us in the past. And so our job is to pass it on. Ensure that the future world that our kids inherit is left in a better place because of the work you've done, as we've benefited from what we inherited in our lifetime. There's that famous Native American Red Indian saying, "We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children." And this is very, very relevant here. That's spot on. So this is the meaning of Khalifa leadership. We are all leaders, and it's our responsibility. We have to maintain the earth. Do not corrupt the earth after it was perfected for us. So I'm not talking about this from a climate change, green energy. I'm not talking about it from that perspective. Obviously, there's that aspect as well. But I'm talking about just principle. In principle, the work that we do has to benefit, and it has to be, left in a good place for future generations. What's happening now is that we're almost colonizing the future. We're kind of taking from our children because we want we want to have our cake and eat it. Essentially, we want everything now, and we're paying the price for all the problems that we don't want to suffer the consequences. So do not corrupt the earth after it was perfected for us. Things are the way they are, generation after generation. So don't think you can change things overnight. So this is a reminder to stay grounded and to do good work for the right reason. And that real change takes time, even if you don't see the fruits in your own lifetime. So instead today we attempt to colonize the future from people who are defenseless, who don't even exist yet. So this is again with the whole hadith around, if the end times comes and you're planting a seed, carry on planting. Again, even if you don't see the fruits in your own lifetime, there are others that will benefit. And so it's really important to have this stuff in mind. Be a long-term thinker. Again, that's what a bird. It thinks about the long term. It has that full picture in mind, and that it's not just short term. Don't be too eager to destroy and rebuild. This is a very modern, the Hegelian dialectic. And so transformational change is better than revolutionary change, because what revolution does, it disrupts, it destroys, and then rebuilds again. And so even looking at the Prophet Muhammad, he didn't disrupt the current social order. So we shouldn't sever the link of the past through our arrogance, thinking, oh no, they didn't know what they're doing. We have better technology, we have better this, better that. Let's start again. Let's start from scratch. Do not sever the link of the future by messing up your part of the chain, because it took eons to get this way. Right. So that's the istiqlal, which is the second part of it. And then the third word related to service is ibadah. Right. So we already know this word. It means worship, servitude, all these things. And what ibadah does in this context, it actually purifies us so we can serve better. But it's a cycle. So ibadah brings all the two in. So the whole reason to do everything we've been given is to purify us. Right? That's why we have to pray 5 times, get up early, give charity. All of this is to make us upright, to make us productive, make us worthy of the role of Khalifa. Essentially, this is our daily practices. This is our stuff that makes us serve better. And so this is so we can actually do justice to our responsibilities. This forms the polishing of the human. All of what we need to do to pray, fast, etc. builds the discipline necessary to be those that can serve even better at the level of ihsan. If we are straight, then those who come after us will be more likely to be straight too. But if the object is crooked, then the shadow is crooked, as they say. You can't say to children, for example, do as I say, not as I do. So the point of it is that the process of ibadah refines us. It builds that character and it ensures that the work that we do is on the right path, and it is good, and it is productive, and it is healthy and cultivating, and all these things that we talked about. Okay, so the whole point of this is siyasa. So what that means is essentially to train a horse, right? It's in this context anyway. Now, what how it was done in the past? It was done gently. First, you got the horse used to the saddle only, and then it would be a gentle whip. Then you put a child on there, essentially, etc., etc. So the idea is that the soul has to undertake an ongoing but slow process of growth. We must continue to grow every single day, otherwise we're dying. And so part of this again is all this worship, all these rituals, all these actions, so we know our creator, so we adore our creator. Ibadah comes out of knowledge, and so we know Allah through our akal, not necessarily which is our intellect, not necessarily nakal, which is revelation. So we ask in the Quran, know that there's no God but Allah. We have to witness it and embrace it and know that. So the idea of all of this stuff is that this worship, it makes us better in our service, and then service makes us better in our worship. So let's summarize that part. Cultivation, imara, to do good work that benefits and does good and adds value. We have permission to use the earth's resources as long as the aims, objectives, and intentions are for cultivation, not necessarily for capitalism or selfishness. When I say capitalism, I mean hardcore capitalism, where nothing matters but the profit. And the second one is istikhla, which is stewardship. So this is reminding you that you're the link between the past and the future generations. Be grateful to the ones that came before you. You can improve and expand on what they did. Don't necessarily destroy what they did. We've got a responsibility to maintain the earth and hand it over in a good state through our projects, through the work that we're doing. And the third one is worship, which is ibadah. So all of this service makes you a better believer. So ibadah is there to strengthen you and give you the resolve and discipline to actually carry out your service. So what's the benefit of all this service, like long term? Let's say we've done it all, and why bother? So obviously, I think I might have used this quote before. Healing others is one of the best ways of healing yourself. So service is one of the basic principles of Islam. Of the Ansar, the inhabitants of Medina, the Quran says they preferred others to themselves, even if their own need was greater. So taking refugees, asylum seekers, dealing with community issues, helping out people who are suffering from this loneliness epidemic, etc. Even if we have endless problems ourselves, we should be in those spaces, because there's a certain cleansing of the soul that comes about by means of service. So Abdul Hakim Arad said that. So you can see that whole worship, the third aspect of it, is very prevalent here. This is a non-Muslim source. The researchers found that if any of the three extrinsic aspirations for money, for fame, or beauty was very high for an individual relative to the three intrinsic aspirations, the individual was also more likely to display more poorer mental health. For example, having an unusually strong aspiration for material success was associated with narcissism, anxiety, depression, and poorer social functioning, as rated by a trained clinical psychologist. In contrast, strong aspirations for any of the intrinsic goals, meaningful relationships, personal growth, and community contributions, were positively associated with well-being. People who strongly desired to contribute to their community, for example, had more vitality and higher self-esteem. When people organize their behavior in terms of intrinsic strivings, relative to extrinsic strivings, they seem more content. They feel better about who they are and display more evidence of psychological health. So that was Desi from a book, Why We Do What We Do. And this is just a story I came across about a Nigerian billionaire. Right, he's a gas and petrol billionaire with multiple businesses. And he was once asked, what can you remember made you the happiest man in life? And then he gave this interesting anecdote and story and stuff. I've gone through 4 stages of happiness in life, and finally I understand, the true meaning of happiness. The first stage was to accumulate wealth and means, but I didn't get the happiness I wanted. The second stage, I collected valuables and items, but I realized the effect is also temporary and it doesn't last long. Then the third stage was getting all these big projects. There was a time where I was holding 95% of the diesel supply in Nigeria and Africa. I'm also the largest vessel owner in Africa and Asia, but I still didn't get the happiness I imagined. So the fourth stage was a time a friend of mine asked me to buy a wheelchair for some disabled children, just about 200 kids. The friend's request, I immediately bought the wheelchairs, and the friend insisted I go with him and hand over these wheelchairs to the children. So I went with him. I gave these wheelchairs to these children with my own hands. I saw the strange glow of happiness on the faces of the children. I saw them all sitting on the wheelchairs, moving around and having fun. It is as though they arrived at a picnic spot where they are sharing a jackpot winning. I felt real joy inside of me. When I decided to leave, one of the kids grabbed my legs. I tried to free my legs gently, but the child stared at my face and held my legs tightly. I bent down and asked the child, "Do you need something else?" The answer this child gave not only made me happy, but also changed my attitude to life completely. The child said, "I want to remember your face so that when I meet you in heaven, I will be able to recognize you and thank you once again." So again, it's a bit of a one of those feel-good stories and stuff, but you can see what from his own words, this anecdote, this story, that only when he was serving, when he was giving, he was acquiring, he was getting a lot in the first three stages. That fourth stage was where he was purely giving, and that's where he experienced true joy. So even though I'm saying that, look, serving is part of our purpose, it's something that we should be doing. Um, I know that we all have, different sides to us, and part of it, oh yeah, logically, we might understand, yeah, okay, I should do it, and it's great, and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm just trying to show as well is that there's psychological benefits, there's mental benefits, there's physical benefits, there's spiritual benefits, and happiness benefits. There's so many different benefits to do this. There's another anecdote actually. I didn't include it in this, but it was talking about a YouTubers, and as they were talking about two YouTubers in particular, Mr. Beast and PewDiePie. Now, PewDiePie has got more followers. I think it's got something like, I don't know how many million, 20 million subscribers. Mr. Beast he's catching him up, but he's not got anywhere near that many. But in terms of revenue, PewDiePie makes something like $10 to $20 million a year. Mr. Beast makes over $100 million. Now, anyone who knows Mr. Beast, his entire channel is centered around him just giving. He gets money and he gives it all away. And so one of his videos might be, I gave away $100,000, or I gave away $1 million to 5 people, and he does all these acts. Obviously, so people are fascinated by that stuff. And I'm not saying he's doing it for service or anything like that. But I'm trying to get you to understand that, again, even Islam, the more you give, the more you get. That's a transaction Allah has kind of promised. The more you give, the more you'll get. And that means, there's another saying that you can pay with time or you can pay with money. So again, this is an example where whether you give time towards something, Allah will increase you. Whether you give money towards something, Allah will increase you. So so this is the power of service done in the right way. So I'm going to give you an example of this, playing out. So we have this. You might have come across this before. This is Amazon's very famous flywheel. Now, this is what they say is the secret behind their huge growth and huge success. So, what they did was that they had this something called a flywheel, and they basically, it's a model that is very repeatable, because what happens is that what a flywheel is when small wins accumulate over time, and each stage creates momentum that keeps the business growing and growing and growing. So, and the idea is that the more things that happen at each of these stages, these forces, and if it happens with more and more regularity, it makes the wheel spin faster, and it gets us closer and closer and closer. So let me explain how this works. So for Amazon, what they said is that we want to create a marketplace that has lots of different sellers. Right, so they invited loads of people who have sellers. That will give us more selection on our on our site, so lots of different types of products. That's going to improve our customer experience because now they've got a lot more to choose from, etc. And that's going to then give us more traffic. And more traffic is going to give us more sellers. And then more sellers are going to give you more selection. And even more selection is going to give you even better customer experience. It's going to give you even more traffic. And so all this stuff built over time, faster and faster and faster and faster, round and round and round it goes. And then eventually, because the profits and things I got so much that they were able to offer, the growth led to them being able to offer a lower cost structure. And so and then that lower cost structure meant, so obviously that in terms of logistics and all these costs got optimized because of the profits and stuff they were making, they were able to offer lower prices. And then that made the flywheel spin even faster. The lower prices led to even better customer experience, even more traffic, etc., etc., etc. Round and round we go. And so the idea, again, if you improve just one area of the flywheel, it adds to the experience and it makes the entire structure stronger. So and so they've got it to optimize perfectly. So it's got full alignment, full integrity, and that's what they focused on. They just said that we need to get this flywheel working. Once it's working, that's the effects are gonna they're gonna take control and do it. What's quite and if there's something out of place, so for example, let's say they got to a stage where the website took extra long to load, and so the customer experience was affected, that's going to be like a misalignment. So it's going to be a bit of a wasted energy on the field. So it's going to slow this part of it down, which might affect this part, and then it has an impact on everything. So again, they are focused on getting all this stuff like fully working because it's how their business works and grows so fast. So we have our own flywheel as well, and if you look at our approach to all this, ibadah and following servitude, following our purposes, all that stuff. That's the first stage. Obviously, it's going to bring around challenges. It's going to be difficult, all that, and that's going to build our resilience. It's going to build our resilience, and you're going to keep doing it and keep going forward, persevering, and that's going to lead us to growth and development. We're going to grow and expand who we are, and that's going to improve the way we serve others. Because again, once you've expanded your mind, once you've been through challenges, the way you serve is going to be better, and remember, service is going to lead to better worship. Round and round we go, round and round we go. Eventually, we're going to get to a stage where we're so developed, and so that's going to lead our worship to even better because now we're so aligned with our purpose, and we know exactly what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, and we want our every act to be accepted as worship. God, it's going to be better servitude, and obviously that's going to bring more challenges along the way. It's going to lead us to better and better and better service, and this is how we're going to then develop world-class, amazing, impactful projects that leave a legacy that serve the world and serve the ummah, etc. So, but you can see that just using the same model that Amazon used, we've got the same thing that we can do, inshallah. So, action items, a complete worksheet 16. And to end, Numan Ali Khan said that your real job is to serve Allah. When you truly complete this job, you get the benefits. Too many Muslims want the benefits, but they don't want to do the job. But that doesn't include you, because you wouldn't be here otherwise. Okay, so that's it for this one, and I'll see you on the next one.